Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. Today we're going to be playing through some more of our students' first courseworks. My name is Tom Blount and I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and I'm joined today by
Madeline Dwyer, and I'm one of the demonstrators.
Excellent. Madeline, can you tell us a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
Yeah, they were asked to make a small prototype game with a good tutorial and demonstrating a strong core dynamic.
Excellent. Alright, let's jump into the first game. Okay, and this is Space Freeze. So nice little sort of title screen here. We've got tutorial, we've got level 1, we've got level 2. Let's start with the tutorial. Interesting, so we've got press A and D to move, and then the second line of the controller is off the screen. But if I use what we've been taught so far, aha, and there's also a clock that's just started on the top left, I've noticed.
Oh yeah, it's good they waited to move.
There's also some lovely background audio that I am just going to drop a little bit to make sure we can hear both of ourselves. There we go. That should be better. So we've got A and D to move, W to jump, space to freeze, time and reveal hidden objects. Okay, so time is frozen, hidden object revealed. Oh, okay, so we have to... I see. So we can see it when time is frozen, but it doesn't actually freeze the clock.
I think I remember actually speaking to this group about this, because I don't think I saw it further along, but like in the early stage I remember saying about how you can only see things when you're pausing.
Oh no. Okay, this is like a really interesting concept. I'm not sure what I think about it at the minute. I mean, you can tell again that I've gone quiet already, so I'm obviously very into playing it. There's something weird about certain things only moving when time is frozen. That feels a bit, I don't know, jarring's not quite the right word, but as though inconsistent, I guess, incongruous, bit of one of those sort of conceptual non sequiturs that we've talked about in the past. Double jump helps you reach height. Oh, I can double jump, that would have been good to know. Spikes hurt you, but only when you're not frozen. Oh, with the spikes hidden, did I just jump headfirst into some spikes? So now I've got to do this bit again. I'm trying to... I need to work out how momentum works as I jump, because I think I will immediately fall back down. I don't continue the momentum that I had. Which again feels a little bit weird, but I guess makes sense from a programming point of view.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's something to do with the fact that they're kind of set in space as well. Would that affect, like, that probably affect how it accelerates and decelerates a bit?
Maybe. Slime blocks become slippery when frozen. Again, that feels like they should become less slippery when frozen, right? Because that's... So if I freeze, I'm gonna... Or if I move and freeze, I'm gonna start flying off the edge. And spikes don't hurt me when I'm frozen, that's the thing I've got to remember. So if I do this, there we go. Try freezing on the up. On the way up. Okay, so we've got like a bouncy pad. Oh, and I got a rank, and I got a rank C. Okay, so
they've got like the super and A and B levels. Yeah.
So what we're saying is I got the worst rank, which is, I think, you know, not bad for a first try, but okay. So something that I think when we start talking about the mark scheme, definitely hammering home a particularly clear core dynamic there with the timer and the rank. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And in fact, speaking of the mark scheme, I think we've probably seen enough of the various mechanics and things to make us start on that. So yeah, let's kick off with like overall quality to start with. So how it looks, how it plays.
Yeah, I think the first category for that is the information design. So I guess it's, do you have all the information you need? Like all the key information, and is it shown clearly? What kind of things we're looking at?
Yeah, so I mean it's pretty clear what's a platform and what's not. It's pretty clear what's a spike and what's not. The sort of slimy gunk stuff on the on the blocks is pretty obvious when that's there. It's pretty obvious when we've frozen because the screens change colour. We've got the clock in the top left. It's maybe not as prominent as it could be, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, I think it's I think most of the information, at least, I can't think of any information that's missing. I don't know if maybe the different ranks, but I think it's kind of traditional for games to only show those on the final bit of the level.
Yeah, you could do something where, for example, you know, the clock changes colour as you change the different rank things. So it starts off, you know, gold for S, and as you sort of drop down a category, it changes to green or something to give you a sense of how well you're doing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, again, we're at a what's the word? A timing puzzle. So I've gone all quiet again. But otherwise, yeah, it's all there. It's all very clear. There we go. See again. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get very good rankings while I'm trying to talk about this and play it at the same time. That's my excuse. So yeah, I would say all of the key information is shown, and yeah, I would go as far as saying is it's shown clearly. I think there are some bits that like maybe could be improved or polished, but overall, I think everything that we need to see to play is there.
Yeah, I agree. Then I think the next category is the graphics.
Okie doke. And overall, yeah, again, the graphics are quite nice. There were some invisible spikes there that I had no way of knowing about. There we go. Yeah, it sort of ties into the information design, but all of the different... I see. It was at this moment he knew. What was I saying? Yeah, overall, like they all work really well together. The little sort of spaceship is maybe a slightly different pixel resolution than some of the other bits.
Yeah.
But you know that's pretty minor, and it's still the same style. So I would say, yeah, consistent, effective, and appealing graphics.
Yeah, so that's up in the excellent category. Yeah, I agree because it all looks like it fits together. I think, like you said, the spaceship is maybe slightly out of place, but only very minor.
Yeah, it's not like they've stitched in a dragon or something from a fantasy game.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's maybe just where the rest of the graphics are a bit simpler. So then, just the detail on the spaceship might be the reason why I'm feeling like it's slightly out of place compared to the rest of it. But yeah, I still think the rest of it is excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Which brings us to audio. So we've got some really, really nice sort of spacey background music. We've got a really nice sort of like sci-fi whoomp every time we switch between, every time we freeze time, I guess. There's a couple of, I think that is kind of the only sound effect though. So it'd be nice if maybe there were a couple more when we die. Although we'd be hearing that one a lot. Maybe something to do with the slippery floor or something. The spaceships humming around when they move, something like that. Or even a jump sound effect would be quite good. So there's a couple of bits and pieces that I think could be improved as far as the effects go, but the music's very nice. So I think I would say between a good and an excellent for this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think if they'd had those extra sound effects you say about if you died or bounced as a jump kind of sound effect, that might help the move it firmly into the excellent, but I think between the two makes sense for what it's got.
Yeah, exactly. Like the effects, the music and effects they've got are quite appealing, but I think they would need a few more effects to really sort of like hammer home that excellent mark. Okay, so how well does it play? So first off, mechanics. So they actually have quite a number of different mechanics here. All of them sort of focused around, you know, sort of platforming and movement and whatnot. So we've got obviously the jumping and the time freezing are the main ones. But we've got the bounce pads, we've got the spikes that only affect you in certain states, we've got this goop that works differently in certain states, we've got the moving platforms and things like that. Like, actually, quite a nice, well-rounded set of mechanics there.
Yeah, it's actually quite a large set, I think. When you like just list it out like that, I think it's one of those things where you're playing the game, it doesn't feel like a lot, or at least from viewing it.
Like, weirdly, the thing that I am looking at the mark scheme and sort of wondering about is the idea of, are these mechanics complementary? I mean, I guess that's it. So the mechanics themselves are. I still have some, perhaps, questions about, you know, the idea of like conceptual non sequiturs and the fact that time keeps going even though we freeze time and certain things only move when we freeze time. Maybe there's like a different framing they could have put on that rather than, oh, it's time stopping, it's, I don't know, shifting dimensions or something weird like that.
Yeah, like, I guess if they said that they like, I would say freezing space, but then that doesn't really work for the
because yeah, stuff's still moving, right? And it's something that as a player you wouldn't necessarily expect given the setup. But in terms of, like, if we just look at the mechanics in isolation as opposed to how they've actually sort of framed it, the mechanics actually work really well together. Like, you can use them in different combinations to solve different puzzles, or move around the level, I guess. So, I would say, I don't know, is this between a good and an excellent, or does it reach up to an excellent?
I think I would potentially be tempted to say excellent. I know that, I think if you ignored the name of freezing time, then I think it is complementary to each other, like the way they work and the fact that you use them in different ways. Like they're kind of different but similar enough that they're not really out of place, I guess, from each other. So if it just wasn't called time, I think I would have definitely said it was an excellent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay, so let's call that an excellent. Which takes us to controls. Yeah, overall, controls smooth and usable. So the thing I mentioned before about the momentum being a little bit weird, so we immediately start falling down when we unfreeze time or switch dimensions or whatever we want to call it, is a little bit unusual, but here they actually seem to use that particular mechanic as a way of solving this puzzle.
Yeah.
There we go, I actually managed it. Now what? Oh, here we go. The space bus has arrived.
I guess it's
So this is...
takes a little bit of getting used to, because I guess you'd expect it to follow the momentum you went into the jump with.
Yeah. And just speaking of... I guess other sort of things that maybe don't work quite so well in terms of mechanics. Oh no. The idea that, so we've got a clock running down, we're clearly being graded on time. In fact, this might come back to risk versus rewards or something like that. But the idea that we've got these timed platform puzzles that we have to wait for an amount of time before we can continue.
Yeah.
Is again something that maybe sort of jars a little bit, but it's not too bad. But we were talking about controls. So I would say, yeah, like there's a relatively simple set of controls in terms of, you know, standard sort of platform-y mechanics, but the way they control the movement's very smooth. It's very usable. There's maybe that lack of intuitiveness with the momentum, but other than that I think it's good. So again, probably between a good and an excellent. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think like like you say, where you're playing it, you don't find it quite as intuitive as it potentially could be. But then I think where almost not having that momentum seems to make it a little bit easier on the puzzles, where you know you want the spaceship that's moving in the frozen time to be directly under you, rather than having to guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think between good and excellent makes sense.
Okay, which takes us on to bugs, I think, which I haven't seen any obvious bugs, and there's a reasonable amount of things going on here.
Yeah, I don't think I've noticed any.
Sorry, I'm trying to speedrun the tutorial. Oh no, I've already messed up. Never mind. So where are we? Game is reasonably complex. No obvious bugs. I think we're there. I think that puts them solidly in excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get.
I think the next section's the fulfilling the brief for the level design aspects, like goals, risks, rewards.
Okay, so what are the goals, risks, and rewards for this game? I mean, the goal is, as with most platforms, keep moving to the right. And that seems pretty clear. Hey, A rank. So what...
Just outside of Super, so.
Oh, just. Oh well, next time. Yeah, so the risks versus reward is interesting. So I vaguely remember speaking to them about this in the expo and the lab sessions. So the idea is, if you are an excellent player as opposed to just a good player, you'll have memorized the levels. You can sort of risk it by making blind jumps rather than freezing time to see the other platforms. So I think there actually is an element of risk versus reward there. Like, particularly because it's tied together with that goal of not just get to the right, but get to the right as quickly as possible, and then that goal is really reinforced by seeing all of the other ranks and times. So, like just then, I feel really motivated to go back and do that again, because I was like, oh, I was just shy of an S rank.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that works quite well. In fact, I would be tempted to say that is probably up at the excellent level.
Yeah, I think it does seem like a good set of them.
Like, as a mechanic, I'm not sure it... Yeah, I still have mixed feelings about it because of the framing and things like that. But in terms of setting up those risks and rewards, it actually works quite well. I can imagine, there being a lot of people who would want to try and, memorize the level to get that rank, rather than having about, like, I don't know, there we go. A couple of blind jumps that are a little bit... Oh, yeah. So that's the thing, that the sort of timed puzzle there is a case of I'd have to sit and wait in the sort of frozen time for that to appear.
Yeah. I guess in that bit, it would almost be good if they'd made it start near the platform that you're on, and then not start moving in the frozen time until you're actually closer to it, because I think it's moving when you're freezing time beforehand.
Yeah, so if there was a sort of trigger or something that said, okay, we're close enough for it to be important now. But yeah, other than that, I still think the dynamic, or rather the goals, risks and rewards they've got there are pretty excellent. So pacing is next. So I would certainly say that the levels are getting harder as we go. What about sort of within the levels? Are there these sort of moments of, sort of higher tension and then sort of like a little break for the player to sort of sit and observe? And I think there is, and in fact almost sort of they built it into the mechanics, because at any point, even if I'm plummeting to my death, I can pause things and then sort of stop and think, can I get myself out of this?
Yeah. Yeah, it gives you a second to reevaluate, or if you jumped, you can pause and think, oh, I'm not going quite where I thought I was, I need to move as soon as I unfreeze the time, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's weird in that they're almost not controlling that aspect of the pacing, they're relying on the player to do it for them. which kind of works. Oh, I did it again, didn't I? Whoops.
Yeah, I think and I think at least two of the levels, I think the tutorial and then this level will start with just like platforms to jump on that aren't moving, and then the level gets more complicated where like you then have spikes and moving ships.
And particularly the last level where we've got to sort of arrest our momentum by using the time stop power so we don't crash into the spikes, I think is a really nice addition to, like, or rather building on the mechanics that they've established. So I would say this is probably an excellent for pacing as well.
Yeah, so I'd agree, because tension rises over time in a coherent and well balanced pattern. So I think.
So to be hitting the sort of prize-worthy category for that, they'd be needing to add sort of variations in the sort of gameplay and things like that to sort of really manage that sort of tension and pacing graph. But otherwise, yeah, absolutely in and the excellent. Cool. So in terms of the other part of the brief was the tutorial level. Can I can't go back to that. So I've got to finish this level, or can I? Oh, there we go. There is a pause menu. To menu. Let's have a look through it. So we've got the initial sort of like text prompts and things just showing us, the basic controls.
And I don't know if it's on purpose that they waited to teach you to jump to find out if you knew how to move. But if they did do that on purpose, it's kind of good to make sure you can move.
Yeah, is it just a quirk of the resolution we're playing at, or did they deliberately put that slightly off screen?
Yeah.
We will never know, but it's a good technique all the same. Okay, so...
And just pressing space to freeze time when they introduced that, if you didn't actually do it, you wouldn't know about that platform, so you wouldn't be able to make that jump, I don't think, without the platform.
Yeah, I think you're right, although we do actually have that double jump to start with that they haven't told us about yet. So something they maybe could have done is not give us the double jump until the game is ready for us to have it. But because if we'd sort of guessed that there's a double jump, it's possible we could have missed the or rather not shown that we can use the freezing time power or whatever we want to call it.
Would you be able to double jump over this bit?
I think so. I mean, we wouldn't here, so we'd definitely have to use it here. So it's I don't know. Maybe I could have made that jump. But these are sort of like minor nitpicks, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got the introduction of the concepts. We've got them actually sort of being demonstrated within the level. And yeah, I think they're sort of aligned with play. We're being shown them in the same sort of environment that we would be, or rather that we are shown in the later levels.
Yeah, so I think the tutorial Mark's game is saying about how it's gradual explanation of gameplay and controls, and how much the controls align with play kind of determine whether or not it's good, and then past that point is whether or not it's communicated through level design as well.
Yeah, and I think it's partly communicated through level design. I mean, so in fact, let's retry this. So all of this is sort of done through sort of text prompts and things like that, and then we're sort of shown that we have to do it through play. It's never left solely to the level design to show it, but that's because some of these concepts again are a bit weird and not the ones that you would expect. Like spikes only damage you when you're frozen, or sorry, spikes don't damage you when you're frozen is not something that would be easy to tutorialize through the level design.
Yeah.
And the same with the slime blocks only working when they're frozen. Again, it's one of these sort of conceptual non sequiturs, I think, that like a slimy thing becomes slippery when... Well, actually, no. Now I've just said that, I've just realised that ice is slippery when frozen, so maybe it does work.
Yeah.
But I
feel like almost if it wasn't framed with timing, it was framed to do something like gravity. I know you're in space anyway, but that might make more sense, but then like you still would slip. But I guess you might still be able to move left and right, you'd imagine, if gravity was frozen.
Yeah, Yeah, like I can see what they were trying to do with the mechanic. It's just that sort of framing is a bit odd, but because of that, it's difficult to just do it through the level design because you need to explicitly tell the player, hey, this is how this bit works. So I think probably between a good and an excellent, because there are some bits where they are sort of building on what we've seen before, like for example that sort of final puzzle with the momentum and the things. That bit is, I don't think, is explicitly explained, but it's left up to the player to utilise.
Yeah, and I think that the like bouncy block which makes you jump higher, that doesn't actually get explained. It's just like you jump on it, and you have to jump on it to get through in the tutorial, I think. So then you learn that just by playing it. I think between the two.
Yeah, true. So there are a couple of elements that aren't outright stated, and I guess some of the combinations of them are done sort of as the levels progress. So yeah, I think between a good and an excellent sort of fits for that. Okay, so along with the game, we asked our students to hand in like a tiny report telling us about the core dynamic of their game and why it was what it was. So what did they say about their core dynamic in their notes?
They said the core dynamic of our game is a race to the end. Simply reaching the end of each level poses a challenge in and of itself, with there being tricky platforming elements as well as the additional challenge of only being able to see or manipulate certain obstacles when the character is frozen. We found, however, that the game becomes significantly more enjoyable when time pressure was added, thanks to a time in the top corner as well as achieving different ranks for beating the level in different times. This made it much more rewarding to play at each level multiple times. Therefore, we believe our game is not just a game of a reach the end core dynamic, but rather a race to the end core dynamic.
So this is interesting. I fully agree with them because they've got the timer and the sort of rankings at the end of the level. That puts it pretty firmly in race to the end, because there's all this pressure of, get to the end as fast as possible to get the best rank. And I think that sort of ties back into some of the things we were talking about audio as well. Like, it would have been nice if there was, I guess, sort of an audio cue or a chime or like another little bit adding to the tension as we got closer to one of those rank boundaries.
Yeah, I think you mentioned like maybe it changing colour or something, so you knew that you'd like gone to the next rank down.
Yeah, or even sort of, I don't know, changing the background music or something as we've had. But like a couple of extra things to really hammer that dynamic home, but I think the dynamic is pretty clear as it is with just the timer and the ranks. We're going to come back to the thing that I've said before, which is, again, the sort of like the fact that the timer keeps running while time is paused is a bit odd. I can see why they've kept it going, because then it wouldn't be a race to the end if they didn't. But it's very close to it almost being like a spatial reasoning game, where it's all about sort of like slowly and methodically sort of working out where we are and how to move next. So I can see that they didn't want it to be that, and they have put effort into making sure that it's not that. Oh no.
Yeah, I think potentially the timing aspect came up because I think originally they might not have planned to keep the timer going when you froze time. But I think when we talked to them about risks and rewards, we were saying that if there's no like risk to pausing time, you would just do it all the time essentially, and just differentiate between like the more skilled and the more beginner players. It allows a more experienced player to just pause time a little bit less, I guess, only when necessary, and just to get like a quick view of what's going on, rather than a beginner who might need to pause it a few times because they're about to jump on a platform and they're like, oh wait, where was it, and things like that.
Yeah, it's more about sort of like smooth flow and sort of continuous movement in the moment, rather than sitting and sort of puzzling out each step.
Yeah, I think I don't know if part of it might have been that if they just had like a maximum time for the level and then made it count down, that might have made it like more definitively, like, because I can see where you're saying there's like elements of spatial reasoning, so I don't know if that would have helped.
So here's the thing, in a way, some of the things they've done actually are towards the prize-worthy end of this. They have almost like a secondary supporting core dynamic that doesn't clash with the one they've got. But it's like you say, it's that differentiation between, you know, a good player will focus on the primary core dynamic, whereas, you know, a novice player is going to have to sort of learn how to learn the levels and yeah. So I think they're. But I think some of the things that we've really sort of. Ooh. I may have just crashed. Oh no, there we go. A little bit of a hiccup there. But yeah, a couple of the things are. Like, a couple of the mechanics, like for example, having to sit and wait for those spaceships, there we go, to appear. You know, if we're sort of like just away from an S rank and it's like, but I can't possibly progress, I have to sit here and wait for 2 seconds for that thing to come up, and that could be the difference between an S and an A.
Yeah.
Is maybe what prevents them from being up at the prize worthy, but I think otherwise it's actually still a pretty excellent core dynamic they've got going.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good. I guess in that situation you described, it's almost like you'd get to that point, either that's where you're like stuck waiting and think, I need to make sure I get to the bit of the level before this quicker so that I have time to wait for it to come back so I can still get the S rank.
Yeah, potentially. This bit of the level I like in terms of having to use the mechanics they've introduced, but I really hate it. Or at least I'm really bad at it. Oh. There we go. Okay, so yeah.
The final bit is the feedback. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, that was it. So I think excellent for the core dynamics still. Feedback. Yeah, so one of the other things we asked them to do was we'd give them some feedback during the lab sessions, and then they had to interpret that and sort of work that into their game. So yeah, what did they say about their feedback?
So they had a few pieces of feedback, it looks like. So the first piece of feedback they had was that the level design could highlight the core dynamic better. So in response to this, they adapted their levels to include features such as easy but slower paths and riskier but quicker paths to make going fast and achieving good times in each of our levels more rewarding. Additionally, we included the ranking system whereby a player achieves a certain rank depending on how quickly they finish the levels, to once again make the core dynamic of race to the finish more front and centre.
So that's interesting, because I don't think I've spotted... Actually, hang on. Well, I think I've seen one alternative path, and I think it was at the start of level 1. So we've got a path up here. Yeah, and then we've got the sort of lower path down there. So okay, yeah, that is also a thing that they have. Which, interestingly, we didn't actually talk about in terms of gold, risk, and reward, because I guess their sort of main mechanic already had that built in, as it were.
Yeah. I think it's good as well because at that point, if you've gone for the riskier route at the top, I think if you fall down, you're likely to end up on the lower part, the easier route that they've made. So then you have like a safety net, I guess, if you'd gone for the riskier route.
Yeah. So although it's not actually a thing we talked about, I definitely think that is a really interesting thing that they've done as a result of that feedback, so I think that's worked out quite well. Yeah, is there anything else they talked about for that?
Yes, the next bit of feedback they mentioned was to create more of a distinction between which state the character was in, frozen or unfrozen. So to accomplish this, they added a sound effect when the button to freeze the player is pressed, as well as adding a blue tint to the camera, so visually it's very clear to the player which state their character is in.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if they that's the only sound effect that they've got in the game, as far as I'm aware. So if they hadn't added that, they'd have definitely plummeted in marks for the audio, because having both effects and music is one of the requirements for that. So yeah, it's definitely had a positive effect in that respect, and I think, yeah, certainly if there wasn't that tint and it wasn't obvious sort of which state we'd switch to, I think that would be detrimental as well. So I think that's certainly been a good change.
Yeah, definitely. And then they have a final bit, but I think this might have been from playtesting type feedback, but they said they were advised to make the game more atmospheric, so they added background music as well as changing the tile palette to a different one, which we felt matched the atmosphere and overall feel of what we wanted to achieve better. Here you got S.
Skin of teeth as well. Okay, yeah. So again, if they had no audio at all, then they would have been in a really bad place for that part of the mark scheme. So yeah, the playtesting feedback from the sounds of it is, you know, little bits of sort of polish that have helped a little bit, but we'll focus more on the sort of the ones that more closely mapped the things we're looking for in the mark scheme. So I've already forgotten first. So the adding the different paths for goal, risk, and reward, I think has had a positive change. It's actually perhaps less vital, given that they already had that sort of built into some of their mechanics. But I think it's still a good thing to have added. And in terms of sort of the clarity in the information design and making sure it's obvious what state we're in, I think that's pretty good as well. So
they did include, I think, the ranking system was also added in response to the feedback about risk and reward.
Okay, so yeah, I think interesting. So yeah, that actually does have an impact on both the risk and reward as well, but I would say mainly it serves to strengthen their core dynamic, because it really nails home that, you know, what that it is a race to the end. But yeah, so overall, you know, they've addressed those different bits of feedback. The changes made have been successful. I think maybe they haven't sort of necessarily gone as far as sort of interpreting them in sort of like a particular way. They've just done the thing that was said, but I think this is probably between a good and an excellent again.
Yeah, I think so. I think like they've definitely been successful. I think like with the feedback they had about creating distinction between the state the character's in, they could have maybe interpreted that a bit further to then add in information about like the jump sound effect and stuff like that, so there's more information about those states as well, not just the frozen or unfrozen state.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but
yeah, I think it's they definitely tried and had success with their changes.
Cool. All right, so that brings us to the end of this game. Let's have a look at the next one, and this is Cyber Smashers. So again, really nice title screen. We've got some sort of supporting audio, and we've got some lovely artwork of this creepy fellow. So we'll find out what their deal is. If I can, there we go. Okay.
I don't think this is what I was expecting from the
okay.
page.
So it looks like
there's that creature.
So we've got some sort of tower defense game is my guess here. But we have kind of been thrown into the deep end of it, right? So we've got a lot of stuff on the screen at once. We've got different types of terrain, we've got some weird purple things, we've got an exclamation mark, we've got presumably baddies, we've got a level, we've got coins, we've got buttons. So if I click on... Okay, so these are spots that we can build in towers. These are buttons to let us build towers. This is a different kind of enemy. But we have really been...
left to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I mean, I'm just gonna keep playing and see what happens. I mean, let's try and... Oh no, I was gonna say let's try and put down a wizard. We can't afford a wizard yet. Oh, there's a speedy boy coming for us. So we'll play this through for a couple of minutes, and then we will, I guess, jump straight into the mark scheme. So I'm not sure how long this is gonna progress for. We're still on level 1 at the minute.
Yeah.
We can almost afford a wizard. Is that gonna look different? Okay, so we sort of like click between these to select which one we're about to build, and then I guess we can...
Sounds like a laser time. Oh, I guess magic, give it the wizard.
Magic lasers, yeah. It's just... So the sound is quite nice, but it is quite loud, and I'm having to sort of bring it all the way down to 1%, and it's still a little bit loud. So I think it'll be alright in the recording. Okay, so we've got... Still at level 1.
I think you can afford another wizard now, though.
Ooh! And if I click on a tower, I can apparently up... So this thing has 7 kills. I can level it up, so I can sell it for almost a third of the value. Ooh, that one's getting speedier. So if I level it up, the damage goes... I don't know what the slashes are. Is this like range? So it'll do 11 damage if it's over here and 14 damage if it's here. Is that what that thing's doing? Is that what that means, do you think? Yeah. Fire rate stays the same, but the range goes up.
And this is actually the damage on different enemies, but I guess, surely, I imagine it'd be the same damage actually on each enemy.
Yeah. Oh, this one looks like it has changed as well. Why is this one a different colour to this one?
Oh, I don't know. Has it run out of arrows?
Okay, so I like that when we upgrade it, it gets a little bit taller, and for the archery towers at least we have like a 2 here. Is it because it's got 0 kills, maybe? Does that mean nothing's ever gotten to this?
Maybe. I feel like things have got round to that, but I don't know if the other towers just got the kill.
And we're still on level 1. So our wizard tower is just mopping everything up as it appears.
It is odd that both of those towers, though, on the left have gone darker.
Yeah, I assumed this one
shadow.
was just that colour because it was, you know, a wizard tower, so it was different to the others, but... I'll tell you what, let's put one over there. Yeah, that one's still...
Is it maybe the lighting, like maybe there's shadow going on because of the mountains and stuff?
I don't think so, but it could be.
Right.
And yeah,
Because it's also pink and the other one's blue. I don't know if that's just where the blue one's not shooting.
I think that's because I upgraded this one.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, sorry, I forgot you'd upgraded. See,
I'm going to wait until... Oh, there we go. Let's upgrade it even further so it gets a little bit taller and it goes red. And then... So hang on, this is level 3. Level 4 doesn't have anything, and we can't... So I'm guessing level 3 is the max level, so we can't actually upgrade it.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Or at least maybe you can't upgrade it when you're on level 1.
Maybe we need a
later.
certain number of kills to unlock that? It's very, very unclear, and if it's a case of level 3 is the max level, this bit should probably be removed.
Yeah, I think traditionally if it's like the maximum level, it normally says like maximum level reached or something like that, so you know you can't upgrade it.
Yeah, the balance... I mean, we'll start going through the mark scheme in a moment, I think. The balance seems a little bit off, because I've put down one wizard tower here, and I think that's totally skewed it, right? Nothing has gotten past it at all. And we're still at level 1, so maybe the progression isn't quite working as they hope.
Yeah, I imagine it should have gone up to like a different level now, so that you had more enemies or harder enemies to kill or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so this thing's killed 63, this thing's killed 9, so we've killed like 80 enemies and we're still on level 1.
I guess maybe it's like 100 enemies?
Maybe. Just upgrade this one fully and see what happens. It's interesting that it's killing them before they've even got on the screen. I tell you, do you want to take a quick look at their game notes and just sort of see if there's anything in particular that they've mentioned that perhaps we've missed about how to sort of progress through the levels, or something? And then we'll take a look at the mark scheme.
Just looking for it. It does mention something about creating good wave timings is complicated, and we haven't fully achieved that.
Okay.
We've put thought into it. It was in their feedback-based changes. They said that they tried to scale it up. The way scaling up the difficulty.
Okay. So perhaps it's just not as fully balanced as they'd like it to be. Although it's strange that we're still at level 1. I'd expect even if, you know, the waves themselves weren't quite tweaked, we'd at least be on, you know, level 2 by now, but I guess that's how it is. So we'll start off looking at overall quality, and then go on to look at how they fulfilled the different bits of the brief. So the first bit is information design.
I think some key information is probably missing. Like about, I guess, information about these waves and stuff like that. Normally there's like not normally, sorry. Sometimes you'll have some indicator of how many more enemies you have in that wave.
Yeah, and even possibly, the types of enemies that will appear in the wave. But I think overall, they've got most of the important information that we need to play. We can see the spots where we can place towers. We've got the amount of money we've got the costs of everything. We've even got some extra stats about how many kills each tower has, which can actually be really useful for sort of determining where a good placement is or what a good value is. We can see that the stats when we upgrade. So most of it is there. You're right though. There's a couple of bits perhaps missing that sort of that would help us judge things a little bit more. So I think I would say between a satisfactory and a good. I think.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think there's just bits that could have improved it, but there's still quite a lot of the key information is shown.
Okay, in terms...
I guess one thing though, not necessarily affecting them, well, not as between satisfactory and good, but one other thing that I think it would have benefited from is if you knew the stats of the archer and the wizard towers before you put it down, at least briefly, you just got the value to go by that the wizard tower's probably going to be better, but...
Actually, yeah, that's a really good point, and I don't know why I didn't think of that. Something like a little tooltip, or for example, if we mouse over, of the level 1 stats of each of these things, so we've got a point of comparison, would be really good.
Yeah, rather than having to save up right at the beginning, having to save up the 300 one. If you did that and then it's actually basically the same or just very slightly different, you might think I should have got 3 archers instead.
Yeah, although the I guess one extra bit of information design that is quite nice is the sort of different design of the monsters. So this one is obviously moving faster, but it looks different to the others as well, which is kind of nice. So yeah, I think between a satisfactory and a good, they've got most of it. There's a couple of bits that would be really useful to have, though.
Yeah.
So the range of this thing, I would have thought, again, this is something that's maybe information design or tutorial related, that this sort of big giant mountain range would be impassable, so this thing wouldn't be able to hit stuff over here.
Yeah, obviously very skilled archers that can bend it over the mountain.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the thing, right? So initially when I saw all of this, I assumed maybe the different terrain would have different uses or different things, maybe the mountains block the arrow shots, maybe towers put next to water might have some sort of special benefit or something, I don't know, but I guess it's just sort of aesthetic rather than anything else. Speaking of aesthetics, So let's have a look at the graphics. So overall, they're alright. They're mostly consistent, and I think they're mostly effective. Again, there's some sort of fuzziness in terms of information design of whether, is the giant mountain different in any way to the town or the forest or whatever, and I think probably not. I think it's just an aesthetic difference. There's a couple of minor inconsistencies between, I don't know, sort of some of the resolution of some of the sprites and things like that, relatively minor. I would say the graphics are probably within the good category. Again, there's some sort of effectively squares missing here and here on this. For some reason, I don't know whether, this is meant to be on a hill, and this is a cliff, or whether it's just there are no tiles for this bit.
Yeah.
But I think other than those things, it is probably under the good category, which is, consistent and effective.
Yeah, I think so. I think I did find it a contrast between the menu page to this. I feel like the menu page, I didn't get this kind of game from it, I guess, this style. So when it switched into it, that kind of threw me. But now I'm used to this. I do think it's still good graphics.
Yeah, obviously, there's lots of room for additional polish. For example, they could style the UI in kind of the same, in the same sort of style, or sort of make it sort of, I don't know, more medievally or something like that, like a paper scroll or little bits and touches like that. But overall, I'd say yeah, it's good. Audio. So we have some nice background music, but I don't think we've got another kind of enemy. Something is happening. Yeah, so we've got some background
also,
audio.
Looks like we've got quite a few more enemies coming in now.
Yeah, although I've actually removed like 2 of our towers, and I'm still not worried. I don't know if I should be worried. I'll maybe upgrade this one just a little bit. There we go. I think we're going to be fine now.
That one actually said max level reached on that one.
Oh, did it?
I think so.
Okay, but it's still got this level 4 bit. So
yeah,
maybe a bit of an oversight there then. What was I saying? Yes, audio. Music's kind of nice, but there are no sound effects from what I can tell. So nothing when we sort of build or upgrade something. Nothing when we kill an enemy, which might be for the best because there'd be a lot of that. But
are there sound effects if the enemies actually get through to the red?
That's a great
down
question. You know what, I'm even going to just boost because I've had to turn the sound down so much for the music. Oh god, that's going to be very loud, but I just want to see if there's... Nope, it's not like they're even sort of slightly unbalanced from what I can tell. So yeah, let's delete some of our towers and see what happens, I guess, when we get to the end there. So the music is still going to be a little bit loud for a minute, but we're going to see what happens when an enemy gets to the end. Oh, just game over. Oh, they're robots apparently. I did not realise they were robots.
No. I guess they did look kind of robotic on the main page, but I think...
Kind of, yeah, I guess so. I guess that it's called Cyber Smashers, right? Again,
yeah, that too.
I'm almost rethinking my talk about it being a consistent aesthetic then, if we've got sort of medieval wizards versus robots. But actually, now that I say it out loud, medieval wizards versus robots actually sounds pretty cool, so I'll keep that as it is. And the art style itself is at least mostly consistent. But yeah, so no audio at all from what I can tell other than the music, which sort of automatically puts them at a pass level because that is some audio effects or music. To get any more than that, they'd need both the effects and the music.
Yeah, I think audio effects are quite important in game design for the feeding back to the user what's going on. So you normally want to pair it with like visual effects as well, don't you, to make it clear to the user anytime.
Even if it's just, like a ka-chunk when we put down a... are we going to lose immediately? Yes, we are. So we only have the 1 life as well. Yeah, like a sort of nice satisfying ka-chunk when we place something or we upgrade it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So moving on to mechanics. So what mechanics do we have? We have placing towers, we have upgrading towers, we have 2 different types of towers. We've got the sort of the money aspect that we get money from defeating things, we spend that money on more things. We've got a couple of different types of enemy. One of them is a lot faster than the basic enemy. I don't know what the slightly more powerful looking enemy does, particularly given that as soon as one of them gets through we lose. So it's not like, we lose more health if that one gets through.
I don't know if maybe it's harder to kill. Maybe it takes more like...
Oh yeah, I guess it's probably that, isn't
damage.
It? It's been difficult to tell because the balance seems a little bit out of whack.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I would go as far as saying, there's a wide set of complementary mechanics here. There's definitely a series of, like a set of mechanics. I think mostly they're complementary. And I think there's a reasonably wide set, but it's not sort of as fully fleshed out as perhaps it could have been. I would be tempted to say it's at the good level though. Like there is certainly... yeah, all of the mechanics they've got work well together. It's just that I think the overall, like, what am I trying to say here? The actual individual mechanics, looking at those purely out of context, work, perfectly reasonably. Build towers, kill monsters, get money, build more towers is a very satisfying gameplay loop. It's sort of the rest of the sort of the context around it that I think is hindering them a little bit, unfortunately. So in terms of the mechanics, actually, yeah, I would say they're good, maybe even between a good and an excellent.
Yeah, I think like they're the kind of mechanics you'd expect from a tower defense game as well. It's not there's no like bizarre mechanics in there that you're like, that doesn't really make sense to have.
Yeah, I'd expect maybe a slightly more variety in types of towers or different effects and things like that. But again, it is just a small prototype of a game that could show where things could go. So I think I would say actually, yeah, between a good and an excellent. It may be a little bit, it may be a little bit generous, but
yeah.
Okay. Controls.
Next, controls. Yeah.
And again, there's kind of a limited set of controls, but that's just sort of naturally there's a limited set of things for us to do. We can place towers and we can upgrade towers, and that's kind of all the controls we've got. And we can also only place towers on the designated tower locations, which is perhaps a bit of a shame. It would be nice if it was a little bit more organic than that. Like there would be something really interesting you could do with the terrain. That, for example, you can't place them on mountains. You can place them on a town, but it'll cost you extra money because you're bulldozing somebody's house. Or you can place it on the forest, and they could do some really interesting things with the level design and positioning and sort of extra mechanics there, for example.
Yeah, you could have had it maybe that if you're across the water, then the archer's aim is a bit affected by like the coastal breeze.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that affects the damage you can do.
So we're sort of torn here between, there are kind of few controls which would set them at a pass level, but also because of the nature of the game they've picked, that's kind of a relatively stable thing. So, the controls that they do have are certainly smooth and usable, probably even intuitive, although, yeah, maybe some, the UI bits could be improved, so, this selects rather than actually just placing it, and I can't unselect it if I need to click somewhere else, so I'm always worried that I'm going to replace one of these, but otherwise, selling things, upgrading them, all kind of works. I would say this is probably at a good.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's a reasonable set of controls for this game style. There could have been more done with them, but I think you don't expect in just the literally placing towers, upgrading them kind of aspects, you don't really expect much more control wise.
Yeah, in which case, is it perhaps it's tricky. Is it intuitive? It's well, I mean, yeah, kind of. It is just clicking on the spots. Is relatively intuitive. I think it's something that is going to come back to perhaps bite them when we talk about tutorials. But for example, they never mention that we can upgrade towers, and yet my natural instinct was to click on it and see what would happen. And yeah, it turns out I can upgrade it and then sell it. So actually, I would say maybe between a good and an excellent, because it does have some of that intuitiveness that we did expect.
Yeah, I think maybe they're missing bits with when you're placing it down, like you say, you have to switch at the top and then go to where you want to place, which is maybe slightly less intuitive. I think generally I'd expect almost you click on the space you want to place it and it gives me the options there and then I click.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, I think it's probably partway there. In terms of bugs and complexity then, again, this feels like it's maybe sort of torn a little bit, because it's a relatively simple game. There are enough mechanics to sort of keep it balanced. And there's again a couple of things that I don't know if it's necessarily a bug or if it's a poorly balanced level, should we say. So I would be tempted to sort of sit this at a good. The game is for the most part, reasonably complex. There are some bits that are perhaps a bit too simple, and there are some bits of it that, like, we've seen that we can't decide if it's a bug or if it's not quite working as intended. So, for example, the fact that the level never increases. I don't know if that's a bug or if there's just only one level.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because it feels like where it says level 1 the whole time, you kind of feel like it's only one level. But I don't know if maybe it's not increasing the number, but the number of enemies coming through is increasing. Like, because you start getting the speedy ones, and then on the previous playthrough, you got to that point where that other robot came in.
Yeah, exactly.
The bigger one. So presumably something behind the scenes is still changing.
So yeah, is it just like a visual bug that this isn't updating, or is it an underlying bug that it's not updating at all, or is it not a bug and it's just there's only one level designed? So I think I would put this as a good for bugs. There's some amount of complexity in this game. It's not overly simple. They've got AI. The AI follows a correct path. The various towers and things target it correctly. There are a number of different elements that have gone into making this game work. So, but yeah, there's these couple of little bits and pieces that we can't quite tell for sure if they're rough edges or bits that haven't been quite finished, or are just bugs. So I think we call that a good, and then we take a look at how well they fulfilled the brief.
One other thing on the bugs though, I don't know if it would count as a bug, but when there aren't any robots actually on screen, the archers are still shooting, I think, at them off screen. I don't know if that would be a bug, but it's just something that I think it'd be nice if they couldn't start shooting until the user can see them as well. Yeah,
and there's also the element of, like, when we lose, we sort of zoom out and we see the entire map, but also like the bare edges of it and things like that. So there's a couple of little bits of stuff that could do with a bit of a polish, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of fulfilling the brief, so level design, are there goals, risks, and rewards? So, I mean, the goal is, it's not outright stated, but it's pretty clear because we've played tower defense games before that it is don't let the monsters get to the exclamation mark. There are various things, they could have done to make that a bit clearer. So, obviously, like we said before, having an actual counter of the enemies we need to defeat to progress. They could do something with the visuals, so instead of just a big red exclamation mark, it is, if it was, they'd put the cities there rather than sort of in the middle of the map. It would be like the monsters are trying to get to the city rather than they've gone past all of the cities to get to the end. But overall, the goal's relatively clear. Monsters bad, build towers to stop monsters. Risks and rewards. Again, there's kind of some inherent risk and reward in it. Do I, hang on to do I build a bunch of cheap towers, or do I hang on to my money and try and upgrade the really good towers? But it's stretching a little bit there.
Yeah, I think the risks is an odd one where it's almost just like there's one risk, and if one monster gets through, then that's it. Game over. Like, there's not other risks. Like,
speaking of,
I guess what you were saying about the town in the middle, if they had like the town in the middle maybe, but then like a castle or something right at the end, so then if it goes into the town, you're like maybe losing some money or something because you have to like repair the structures that is damaged.
Yeah, and again, part of it is just down to the balance is a little bit off.
Yeah.
Ooh, I've just noticed when I start this thing is flashing. Is that the tutorial?
Essentially, because the archer is also in purple.
Is this why the colour was changing? Because it was trying to flash over there.
Oh, maybe.
We'll come back to that. So yeah, this one's now like a slightly different shade of grey, right? Is that because it's stuck halfway through that flashing animation? Interesting. Anyway, we'll come back to that. So yeah, Definitely a lot more they could have done with the risks versus reward, like you say, how they can spend that gold, how the enemies can sort of like force the issue a little bit. Right now, the goal is relatively clear. The risks, there are some amount of risk and reward, but I would say there's a relatively limited set of them at the minute, which would put them at a pass level for this.
Yeah, I think I'd agree.
Right, next one, sort of pacing, and this is, I think, where they may struggle. There's obviously an attempt that the pacing should rise over time. The robots seem to increase in number and to a degree strength, but it's very poorly balanced against the towers. Like, even the level 1 towers seem to do just fine for an incredibly long amount of time, so we can just put a level 1 tower here and that's basically us sorted for most of the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think also the fact that it doesn't actually take long to get the money to upgrade and everything to like full like level 3, so then I feel like once you've done that, it's just essentially just there's no more progression. You just keep putting the same ones out and then upgrading them all the way to the top, and then you just let it play through essentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because they're like a single tower is so sort of overpowered. I can just leave it there and accumulate enough money to instantly put down a level 3 tower the second I feel that I want it, that I need it. So I can see the attempt they've made at pacing, but I think we're still at the pacing is flat, which unfortunately puts them sort of down at the absent end of the mark scheme.
Yeah.
Possibly,
especially where.
Yeah, possibly sort of like between an absent and a poor, because, you know, I can see that they've made an attempt, but it hasn't worked, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I'd agree, because like the waves as well don't seem to be working. Well, it's hard to know what they intended, but they seem to be off balance, as you said. So then the first playthrough we did, it's not like we actually had much risk of them getting through to the end. You had to delete all your towers to actually let one through to see if there was any audio feedback. So
yeah, and like I don't remember how long we've been playing this particular run for, but I've upgraded my first tower to level 2 and it's killed everything off screen. So yeah, I think that's where we are. Unfortunately, could have used perhaps a little bit more balancing and tweaking. Tutorial, again, I think it sort of struggles with this. So we did sort of notice that one of those tower spots was flashing a little bit, but I'm not sure that's enough to call a tutorial. We totally missed that the first time through as well. It's definitely not obvious enough to teach the player the concepts of this game. We managed to muddle our way through because, we have played tower defense games in the past, but if we hadn't, we would be kind of at a loss for what to do.
Yeah, and like I know you've mentioned it before, but about how like the initial screen doesn't really like lead you into a tower defense so much. If like going straight into it without having like an actual tutorial as well, it's always just like, oh wait, it's tower defense, what am I doing? Like, what do I need to do? And like working it out for yourself. I think I kind of get the feeling that maybe they were trying to make it so that you were like learning in play, but they just didn't actually do the teaching aspect, I guess.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, right? In effectively in the real world, all of the sort of like websites with like tower defense flash games and things like that, you could probably get away with this kind of a tutorial because you're putting it in that environment where people are familiar with sort of those concepts and probably could muddle through. But for a coursework where you've been specifically asked to create a tutorial for something, it's probably not sufficient to just have a thing flash. So unfortunately, I think this probably is down again at the absent level. Like they... Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree, because it's not even like you had to place that tower there or anything. So like that flashing was quite easy to miss, as we showed by missing it.
Yeah, and also sort of as we sort of remarked upon when we hit play, right, we're immediately thrown into this. None of the sort of like interface or anything is explained. The enemies start appearing more or less immediately before we've had a chance to understand the basic concepts and things like that. It would be very, very difficult for a new player if the towers weren't so overpowered. Which
and then
is
there's all
a
that
shame,
information about the towers when you go to upgrade them. That's not explained, and I still don't really know what those different ranges and stuff meant.
Yeah, that's the point. It was the wizard tower, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the damages. So I'm still not entirely sure what that is referring to.
That's
I don't know if it is the different enemies.
So this, now that I've upgraded it does say max level reached, but then if I click on it, it says level 4.
Yeah, I think that's what I noticed before, because I thought I saw something saying max level reached. So.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's unfortunate really, but it is what it is. So let's talk about their core dynamic. So what did they say for their core dynamic in their game notes?
They said our core dynamic is survival. And that's all they've got written down.
Right, okay. So, I mean, I agree with them. It is survival. It's all about lasting longer than you did the previous time. Obviously, that's sort of thrown out of whack by some of their mechanics, or rather the balance of some of their mechanics. The fact that it is like instant death as well, the second one of them gets through, is... I mean, it's one way of doing it. I mean, a lot of tower defense games, or some tower defense games, for example, will give you, a certain number of lives or chances or a health bar or something that decreases as different enemies get through, because then you can do slightly more interesting things with, if a powerful enemy gets through, you lose more lives or more health than just a regular enemy. But okay, it's sudden death survival, if you like, and you do have plenty of time for a thing to get through where you can sort of panic and scrabble and build some towers right at the end. Again, assuming it was balanced as intended. I
guess the other thing is, I haven't actually played that many tower defense games, but wouldn't traditionally like the towers sometimes get damaged? Like at the moment, the monsters kind of just walk past them.
Sometimes, although not as often as you might expect.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure what the standard kind of was. Yeah, I think it would have been nice to have almost like levels of the survival. I guess that kind of like links in with like things like the pacing and the tension aspects, where it is very much like, okay, he's through, the monster's through, you've lost. There's no like, oh no, I'm like lower health and now there's still loads of enemies coming, so I need to like keep adding more towers that are stronger to try and like stay on top of it and keep myself going whilst I recover.
Yeah, or even, like there's the final giant boss of the wave that sort of made it, to halfway through. So I'm desperately deleting all of the towers at the front so I can afford a tower at the end, kind of a thing. But yeah. So overall, I'm in agreement with them that it is survival. It's a bit of a shame that they didn't make an attempt to explain why they think it's survival, because that makes me wonder if they have understood the different elements of it, and then equally, why their game is how it is, for example. But okay, I'm in agreement with them that it is survival. And I think this ends up sort of at the good level for core dynamic. The core dynamic is clear. It is supported by the primary mechanic. There are issues surrounding some of the primary mechanics, though, and I think that's which might put them down, for example, between satisfactory and a good. It's difficult because I'm sort of judging this based on if it were balanced as I would expect it to be, but the problem is it's not. So it's yeah.
I think I'd probably agree that it's between like a satisfactory and a good, where like if it was balanced better with the waves, I still think there'd be like aspects of survival that you might want to like emphasize a bit more by having things like not just sudden death and aspects like that. Yeah,
and I think even between a satisfactory and a good is perhaps being a little bit generous, but we're taking the view that the mechanics themselves serve the dynamic. There are perhaps some like ones that are missing, and obviously there are some that are perhaps unbalanced, but overall, like we could tell that it was meant to be a survival game, so I think, yeah, between a satisfactory and a good is probably fair in this case. Okay, and lastly that brings us to feedback. So what did they say in their game notes about the feedback they were given during the lab sessions?
So they've got 4 different pieces of feedback. So they've said that the feedback they received was to keep the scope small, only need to build a minimum viable product, make sure the wave timings are fun / game flow is solid, make sure there's enough UI interaction, and then the last thing is that they'll have to think differently about the tutorial, try to integrate it seamlessly. And then they've got underneath that they've written what they've done to address this feedback.
Okay, so what have they done to address that feedback? Because
for the first bit they said we definitely needed to keep scope small to get all of it done, so we only included 2 towers, 3 enemies and 1 map. This is enough to give a good feel for the game and its potential / vision. The next bit they've said is creating good wave times timing is a complex process, one that we haven't fully achieved yet. Although we have put thought into our waves to make sure it scales up accordingly, and have prioritized fun in our game loop by increasing enemy numbers and tower damage, making it feel like more stuff is happening. There's the final bit. The next bit is there's not too much to interact with on screen during waves in any tower defense, but we made sure to add statistics and scores to keep an eye on mid-wave. I guess that's referring to like the number of
kills
from
each
the
tower
towers.
has, yeah.
And then the final bit, which they've written the most about, is the tutorial. So it says the tutorial was challenging because there are a few mechanics to explain. They don't make logical sense and many people already know them. We tried to explain all of our game mechanics naturally without telling the players in words what to do. We assume the player already has a sense of danger as enemies walk across the screen to the end goal, with buildings and a red warning sign. We tell the player about turrets by flashing one of our placement points and have set up the buildings so that they will automatically build a turret, which should immediately start firing at the enemy that scared the player. This teaches them about turrets, their job, and how to build them. That building then flashes, which if they then click, will show them the stats of the turret and its upgrade cost and effect. This teaches the player about the gold, upgrades, levels, stats, and areas of effect. This is all of the game mechanics we have.
Yeah. So I can see where they were coming from with that. They were trying to do like a fully sort of textless tutorial. But I think the way they did it, like even just like the flashing was not highlighted clear enough that we could sort of like instantly do it. So although I see where they were coming from, I don't think they necessarily tutorialized it very well, unfortunately. I can see what they were going for, I just don't think it came out as they were hoping. Okay.
Yeah, I think this style of game where if you're going to have like stats, things like that to like look at, I think it's hard probably to tutorialize that without any sort of text to the user, especially as if there's like the damages and that, if that's different ranges, you'd kind of expect some more like feedback or visual like information telling you what each of those ranges were or something like that. So or if it is the different monsters, you'd want feedback that told you that that's how it works and things, and like you kind of need to explain that to the user, I think.
Yeah. And I think, so for example, I appreciate that they were trying to go for maybe like a textless tutorial. I think they could have had like a little bit of text, sort of, you know, like step 1, place a tower, step 2, and then explain some other element of it through the level design and through play. Like the way they introduced the monsters is pretty good. Like I would maybe wait until the player had built the first tower before introducing them, but then sort of as the game progresses, wow, we are actually getting quite a lot of them now. Like the speedy ones, for example, or the tougher ones, they introduce those in such a way that actually is explained quite nicely through the level. There's enough time to react to like their appearance, because by that point we already have a few towers and we can see how they interact with them. So the stronger ones take more hits, for example, or the speedier ones get further along than we expected, but we still have the time to react because we've already been taught how to build towers at that point. So I think, yeah, so I can see what they were going for. Tutorial-wise, I'm going to stick with what I said earlier, that they have not tutorialized the core concepts very well, but I understand what they were trying to do with that, and there's maybe some sort of ways that they could have incorporated what they were trying to do a little bit better. In terms of the scope, yes, I agree that, you know, it's a small prototype, they should be sort of like aiming for that anyway. Even so, like, it looks like they've had some issues with, you know, balance and pacing and things like that.
Yeah. I think part of it is almost like they probably didn't need to add more. It's not like you needed many more towers or upgrades or anything like that, but just balancing when you can access it and like split, almost like kind of going back to the pacing a bit, I guess, where you like split up when you can actually access these things, so that then it feels like there's more in the game, I guess. That would make it feel like more, even though there's not actually any additional towers or monsters or anything.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're at a stage where they have definitely addressed the feedback or made an attempt to address it, but some of the changes they've made haven't worked as well as they'd have hoped, unfortunately, which I think puts them sort of at the pass level for that.
Yeah, I think passes feedback was addressed, but the changes have had limited success.
Okay. Alright, I think that wraps everything up for this game. So yeah, overall, you know, it's like some good ideas, perhaps not executed well enough, perhaps could have used a little bit more testing sort of towards the end, but overall something that could definitely be developed further into like a really well-rounded game. Okay.
Yeah, I think it is a good starting point.
Alright, let's move on. Okay, and this game is Tether. So nice little start screen. Not sure what the weird rotatey thing on in the middle of the screen is, but it looks cool. If we go to play...
Yeah, I was trying to work it out. But...
Cool, we got a level select. So we'll start with level 1, and as mentioned to us in the expo for this game, we're reminded to make sure we enable the help text. So I think that should be enabled by default. It, for some reason, wasn't in submission, but we know that we should enable it. Good. Because it would be very silly if we played all of this and there was no help text. There we go. Move your mouse around. Left click when the crosshair turns green. Okay. So I'm moving it around. It's not turned green yet. If I mouse over this green thing? No. What if I mouse over the ceiling? There we go. And the text changes as well. So left click here to grapple. Oop. Aha. So if I click, I've got to click and hold to keep the grapple there, and if I let go, the text goes back to what it was, and it also switches between that. That's actually really nice sort of contextual tutorial stuff there. So let's grapple.
Yeah, that's
good. Can I grapple on the side of this? Yes. Let go when you think you can reach your next point. I may have made a mistake. This is probably bad, isn't it? Yeah. Ooh. But it resets us right at the beginning with like very little fanfare, so we get to try again immediately. So that again is like a really nice touch. So let's try it properly this time, and we'll reel over here. And if I let go, you smack into this green thing, which I'm assuming is good. Excellent.
So I think that's a little scoreboard potentially.
Yeah, these.
Like the best times.
They're all the same time.
Maybe it's where it's almost a tutorial level thing.
Yeah. So
we'll see on the next level, I guess.
Okay, so we did it in... That's a very generous time then, because I did spend a lot of it faffing about pretending I had no idea what I was doing. Which is, you know, probably good in a tutorial. Alright, next level. Just check, do we need to enable help text again? We do. Move your mouse to look around. Left click here to grapple. Oh, okay, so it's the same help text, but the context is different. That's kind of interesting. So we can't reach that one, but can we reach this one? Yes. Oh no, I'm gonna have to Spider-Man my way across this. Okay, so I guess the... what's the word? The actual tutorial text is the same regardless of what level we're on. But it's still all contextual, so it's when I mouse over the correct thing in any level. So, which is actually a really nice way of doing it. There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
so
No gems this time. I've got to do it in 17 seconds. Well, let's retry that then. So the reeling in feels a little bit slow, particularly if they want me to do that in 11 seconds. Wow. Can't click on that. And the look controls are a little bit slow, given how fast it feels like it wants me to, you know, react to things like that. Oh no. Bonk.
Are you still being reeled up?
I think I am. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I think I almost did worse that time. Not quite though. All right, let's go on to the next level. And I think we've probably seen enough of it at the minute to start talking about the mark scheme. So pink bad, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah, I was trying to deliberately crash into that, but I failed. But yeah, overall quality, presentation, aesthetics, that kind of thing. Here we go. Bonk.
The first bit is information design. So I guess the kind of information you would need is to know when you can grapple, and they have that quite clear change. And I think it's quite useful as well that they change the colour when you're reeling yourself in as well, so you know that you are actually currently grappled. They seem to have different colours for each aspect of it. You can see the grapple line quite clearly, I think.
Yeah.
The
oh no.
Wait.
So this is more a controls thing, I think. But yeah, the looking around and the reeling in speed feel a little bit slow for... they just feel a little bit slow. I feel like I should be, you know, sort of Spider-Man, like sort of look, flick, jump kind of thing.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not the aesthetic they're going for. Also, having to hold down left click and reel in at the same time is something that I'm struggling with. There we go. But yes, information design. So we've got the time, we've got the really nice contrast between when we can grapple something and when we can't. Oh no. See, it feels like the reel should be faster than gravity, I think is what I'm getting at there. Like, because there I was reeling myself in and still falling faster than I was reeling.
Yeah.
Getting distracted again. Usually the mark of an interesting game where I'm struggling to talk about it at the same time as play it. So yeah,
I think where you could grapple to is I don't know if it would benefit from being a bit more like contrasting from like the brown to the black background, but where you've got the green crosshairs when you can grapple, at least that kind of makes it clear when you can grapple to that surface or not.
Yeah, the overall, like, mostly it's the colours are like a really quite nice bold choice. Like it's like the pink is very, very bright, and oh no, I'm falling again faster than I'm grappling, so I'm not doing that correctly. It might be, you know, a little bit noisy, like the sort of crossed-hatched pink is maybe a little bit... Oh, can I just sneak around this way? I'm a genius.
I think maybe you need to wait until you finish grapple. Oh no, you did it. I was going to say maybe you need to grapple... wait until you grappled higher, so you didn't have the gravity issue. I
was hoping my time would reset every time I died, and I've just realised it didn't. So if I'd have done that first time, I would have done quite well. Let's try it again. So would we say all the key information is shown? Is there any key information that we think is missing? So we've got the timer, we've got the contrast of what makes us alive versus dead, we've got the goal, we've got... So I think maybe it could show us, you know, on the clock, like if we've got sort of like oh wow, we were expected to do that in 8 seconds. Yeah, that's not happening. Like if we had those 3 gems sort of next to the clock and they sort of disappeared as we went past each milestone or thing. That would be like a nice extra touch. But I think all the information there is what we need, and for the most part is very, very clear. So I would say we're probably up at an excellent again.
Yeah, I think so. I think all the information is definitely there. It could be like improved, but
that's interesting. So despite the fact that all of the tutorial text previously has been sort of, pop-ups at the bottom of the screen, we actually have some in-text ones as well. Which is fine. Just an interesting choice. I'm going to try that. So for a route that is supposed to be really difficult, that actually seemed pretty alright. Maybe I'm just really good at this game now.
Yeah, you might just be a pro at it.
Yeah, I think it's probably that.
Well, the fastest time is 4 seconds.
Yeah,
So.
I'm clearly not a pro after all. 4 seconds feels... I'm not going to say impossible, because I'm sure one of the devs would happily demonstrate them getting that time, but wow, that does seem a bit tight.
Yeah.
We are so distracted again. Graphics.
Yeah, the graphics.
And by we, I do mean me, because I'm the one playing it. Yeah, so graphics. Consistent and effective. Consistent, effective, and appealing even.
Yeah, I think they're definitely consistent. I think they are appealing, but I think it's a bit noisy, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
With the hatch, on the floor, it's not too bad, but I think those pillars.
They're particularly when they're sort of overlapping and okay. I feel like I do have to really start reeling myself in there, and even then, see, I'm reeling in, and I'm gonna. Ooh, this is going to be a tricky one. So yeah, overall, I would say they're probably, I would say they're appealing. I think, yeah, again, maybe they don't quite reach all the way up to prizeworthy, because in some situations it can be a little bit noisy and it can be a bit tricky to sort of see the goal through where we're meant to be going, but overall it's relatively clear what each thing is, and as an aesthetic it works quite nicely.
Yeah.
Is it because I start reeling myself down and that's actually accelerating me? Maybe I should only reel in when I'm past the tether.
Or maybe. You could also try and land on the top so you don't have the gravity.
Oh, that's a good thought.
You stop accelerating kind of thing and then can start again.
Yeah, let's try that. So yeah, I think we're at an excellent again for the graphics, and for audio we've got some really nice sort of poppy, lively sort of electro music that fits quite nicely with the graphics as well.
Is there any feedback when you're reeling or grappling?
Yeah, we've got a lovely little sort of pew pew whenever we grapple something. We've got a sort of little whir when we're reeling in that again pairs nicely with the cursor changing colour, so we've got some good feedback for when we're actually doing what we think we're doing. And a lovely little sort of an electronic blip every time we die, which I'm hearing quite a lot. So yeah, overall, what have we got? Good mix of effects and music. Complementary and appealing. They certainly complement the graphics. They're quite appealing. They're not grating on me yet, despite how often I'm hearing that death sound. Again, maybe some sort of room for improvement with I don't know, for example, the music sort of increasing in tempo as we get closer to the end, or as the time gets further on or something, to really pressure the player into going faster. But otherwise, I think we're at an excellent there.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, which brings us to mechanics. So what mechanics have we got? We've got different surfaces that we can grapple to. We've got different surfaces that will kill us. We've got a clock. We've got a ring that reduces the speed of the clock. I may be a little bit stuck now.
Is it the other side you want to go? Or...
Hang on a minute.
Yes, I think
I haven't got to this stage before, and I haven't thought about what I'm going to do now.
I think you're falling now.
Yep. Where do I want to go, though? That's the question.
Are you too far away
no,
to grapple
I
to
can't
those?
grapple onto those. Okay. So
I
would
think
say,
you might have been accelerating yourself down there because that's been like a slower fall than you were having before.
yeah. So I was basically trying to. So if you just tether, you'll still fall as normal, from what I can tell. And it's only if
Right.
you're arresting your descent by trying to. Anyway, I was halfway through talking about mechanics.
Yeah, sorry.
I would say we're at least at a set of complementary mechanics. They work quite nicely together. Would you say we're at a wide set? So let's go skip to the level select, and we'll just. I think that was the last level, so I think this is the culmination of all of the mechanics.
Yes, I guess. It's kind of difficult to tell because it's like I'm trying to think what else they might add, and I think it's most like they've got that ring aspect. So I guess it'd be other things like that, just like or like other
Other ways of sort of
types of
moving
obstacles
about,
and things.
like, platforms that move, or something like typical sort of platformy stuff. But there are certainly things that could be added. But I think what they've got at the minute is
a reasonable amount.
yeah.
So I don't know if maybe between the two or
I would say between a good and an excellent. I think there's a couple of things maybe they could have added, but overall what they've got works really nicely together, and that's the important bit.
yeah. Then the next bit is the controls, which you've kind of touched on a little bit, where you feel.
Overall, they're fine. The rotation speed and the speed of the. So part of this, I think, is almost going to determine, or rather, is going to depend on what they've said they want their core dynamic to be. If, for example, this is a spatial reasoning game, then the slower pace and the more sort of I have to sit and think about how I'll be able to get over here with the grappling hook as it is, then that kind of works okay. If they're going for a more race to the end, which I suspect they might given that they've got the timer, it almost feels like you want to emphasize, fast and smooth and fluid movement a little bit more, so you'd want a little bit more sensitivity in how I move around.
Yeah.
So the controls themselves are, where are we? Reasonable set of controls. They are smooth, they are usable. This is it, they're intuitive, but they could be smoother, I think, is what I'm trying to get at. So I would say probably between a good and an excellent for the controls.
Yeah, I think one thing as well that probably made me feel like it was less intuitive was where you said you had to hold down the left click, but I'd almost imagine that grapple would be a toggle where you just click and then click
Yes, actually. That was the thing I also meant to mention.
So I think that's holding it back from being just in the excellent category. So yeah, I think between a good and an excellent, just where there's like those little things that you'd probably want to fine tune a bit more.
Yeah, just a couple of little bits of polish, but other than that, definitely really, really good. Okay, bugs. I guess there's the minor bug of one of the tutorial things isn't on by default, but that's so minor that I'm not sure that one is sort of worth talking about too much, particularly as it's a thing that they drew our attention to. It's a known issue. It's just a case of flipping something from a 0 to a 1 effectively. In terms of the actual sort of game and any bugs in it, I haven't spotted any. There's some sort of perhaps oddness in like certain bits of the movement, like I'll get caught on the edge of a platform occasionally. But I don't know if that's a bug so much as just like an inherent feature of some of this movement, really. So I would say we're probably up at an excellent. So the game is relatively complex. There's no obvious bugs.
Yeah, I think other than the tutorial one that you've mentioned, but obviously I feel like it's quite an easy mistake to forget to leave that on as default. And easily fixed, and we could still access the tutorial, which is the main thing.
Why can't I get? Oh, I can get to that one. Oh no, that's not going to work. Okay, so moving on to how well they fulfilled the brief. So we've got the
Goals,
risk, reward.
First?
That's first. Yes. So goal is pretty clear. Get to the end. Get to the end as fast as possible. In particular, risks and rewards. So we have the ones that are tied directly to the goal, which is to say, you know, the faster we get there, the better time we get. So we're more incentivized to sort of take less time to think about things and sort of, again, try and get that sort of smooth movement flow to maximize our score at the end. And then they do have these, like, again, slightly explicit, like here is the risky path, here is the safe path signposts, which, you know, as it's something that we're looking for in a mark scheme, probably good to be a bit explicit with that. But yeah, so that's an extra sort of risk reward element they have, with multiple paths through each level. Although I would absolutely take the safe path if I could.
Yeah, I think they've got goals, risks, and rewards, which is always a strong start. And like you say, it was quite explicit about the ring, but it does add something to it rather than just being on the time base, especially where the time seem beyond probably my abilities to begin with. At least gives me something to go for until I can do these levels faster and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I think part of the reason I'm struggling with this goes back to something we were saying about the controls. It's like the sort of like the transfer of momentum that I feel like this is pulling me down a lot more than it's pulling me forwards, which is a thing that I'm not expecting. So I'm gonna have to work around that a little bit more than I am currently.
Yeah, I was trying to work out if potentially you're like grappling down. Like, I don't know if that's an option to like grapple down with gravity, or if like the grapple can't fight gravity exactly or something.
Yeah, I think that's sort of maybe. So if I do this, I can almost what's the word? Abseil sort of down it a little bit, and then there we go. I can sort of do this a bit more. I've just got to not slam into the pink wall, but I'm falling down a lot more than I'm moving forwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is gonna cause me problems.
I should find the end as well.
Yeah, so the ultimate goal is clear, but how to achieve it is maybe slightly less, because I know I have to get to the green thing, but I don't know where the green thing is at the minute, and I've lost sort of perspective of where I am.
Yeah.
Alright, as I'm slowly edging around this wall, in the hope that maybe there's a green thing somewhere down here. I've got this around there, okay. I've already forgotten what we were talking about.
The goals, risk, rewards aspect. I think.
There we go. Yeah. So, what would a good be, for example?
A good is a clear and coherent set of goals, risks, rewards.
Ah, there it is. This is the first time I've actually seen the end of this level. I think we're definitely there. Do we think they're well balanced?
I think the times they've used as their stages is maybe a bit optimistic,
somewhat ambitious,
especially for beginners.
So it'd be nice if, you know, I mean, I guess there's like, for an absolute beginner, just completing the level is a challenge, but it would be nice if, yeah, it's like 21 seconds, and that took me 7 minutes.
Yeah,
it feels like maybe
I think
you could have like
it's not even like close.
The bronze medal be a little bit more what's the word? Gap effectively between each of the different milestones. But I think, you know, they're on their way there, so perhaps between a good and an excellent again.
Yeah, maybe they should have added in like a participation medal for you got to the end at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what, you know, the end of the level and unlocking the next level is. But yeah.
So then the next bit's the pacing. So across in each level, but also across the different levels.
See, like this one, it's 1 minute 40 for all of them. I mean, it is the tutorial level, but wow. Yeah, anyway, pacing. Tension clearly rises over time. We start off pretty easy. It gets quite complicated quite fast. Again, it sort of ties into the goals they're setting. If they like the design of the levels themselves sort of amp up in difficulty quite nicely, although I think the goals they're setting maybe amp up a little bit too fast.
Yeah, I feel like having like intermediary levels might have been good. Obviously, for the coursework, they're only expected to make a reasonably small game, so that might be as part of it.
Yeah,
but...
I, the levels themselves are fine. It was more the, what I was hoping to sort of get to the end of this level in a reasonable time, so I could say, look, I did it in a reasonable time, and it's still asking me to do it in 4 seconds flat or something like that. But I've kind of failed there. But yeah, so I would say, the tension rises over time, and it's a relatively coherent pattern as well. Like, we're introduced to a number of different concepts, both the rings and the sort of like having to, like I say, sort of Spider-Man our way across by grappling stuff in midair is kind of a nice touch.
Yeah.
So to reach an excellent, it would have to rise over time in a coherent and well-balanced pattern. And yeah, I think we've spoken about the goals are perhaps a little bit unbalanced, but the levels themselves I think are balanced okay, so I think they may be upper and an excellent there. What do you think? Or perhaps partway between the two?
I think maybe partway between the two. I think the levels like definitely increase in their difficulty. I think part of it is where you have the small boxes in this level and then you don't actually see them again, I don't think. And then the next level, I can't remember the orders of the level now that we've been playing through them.
This is level 3, so yeah.
I think between these two is probably the right tension change where like you're doing something kind of similar but there's now more obstacles. But I think the final level just seems like a real step up where there's a lot more gravity and stuff to contend with.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's the thing that's just holding me back from the well balanced. I feel like it's almost really well balanced. It's just missing like a little bit between the final level and the penultimate level.
Yeah, I think I agree with that actually. So between a good and an excellent then. Okie doke. So that brings us to
the tutorials next.
Yeah. Thank you, as I'm sort of just slowly dragging myself over to the end of the level. Tutorial, yeah. So, yeah, minus the pop-ups not showing up by default. It's actually a really nice tutorial. So I said sort of, in fact, let's go back and look at it specifically. The fact that it's all contextual and the fact that it resets if I haven't demonstrated I can use it. And in fact, the fact that it resets even when I have demonstrated I can use it if I need a reminder is quite good. I can toggle it on and off, so I could have it on for every level if I felt I needed it, although probably wouldn't be that helpful by the end of the level. But the contextual nature of it is really good. We're sort of introduced to the really important sort of basic movement mechanics. And then the rest of it is kind of all done through the level. If we go back to the level select again. So is it this one that introduces rings? Yeah, so a couple more sort of like explicit sort of tutorial messages. Again, like it doesn't hurt to be a little bit over explicit when it's something we're particularly looking for, but it tells us not only what the ring does, but why we might want to take the other route that doesn't have this good thing.
And there was actually a bit of feedback as well when you went through the ring, the time changed to like green to show it had gone down.
That's a good point actually, and there was a lovely little ding as well.
I did really like the contextual aspect of the tutorial. I think especially if you click the left click, if you like release it, it goes back to showing you how to do it, because I think sometimes if you're like especially really new to the game, or maybe you don't play games in general anyway, that's the kind of information that like a lot of games would expect you to just remember, and it might be a bit frustrating if you've done it and then you've just been thinking about something else and then you undo it and you're like, wait, how did I get to that state I was in? Because I need to get back there, and like being able to do that quite easily with this tutorial I think was quite good.
Yeah. So I would say this puts them probably towards an excellent, really. So they've got gradual explanation of the gameplay and controls, fully aligned with play, and sometimes communicated through the level design.
Yeah, I think I'd agree that it's up there.
I really thought I had it that time. Yeah, okay, so what did they say about their core dynamic?
They've said, our game has a clear core dynamic of race to the end. This is due to the mechanics of the game as well as the information displayed in the player view indicating to the player that the objective of the game is to reach the end gate as quickly as possible. The means by which they can reach the end goal is through the core mechanic of the game, which is the Tether ability, as implied by the game title. Players can look around a level for grapple points to which they can attach their tether to and reel themselves in, giving them momentum and allowing them to traverse across other dangerous abysses in each of our tutorial levels. Flinging their avatar through the end gate will greet the player with a level complete screen that displays their final time, and a number of gem objects will be lit up, depending on whether the player finished the level within certain times.
Okay, so yeah, I again pretty in agreement with that. It's pretty solidly race to the end because they have this sort of big ticking clock. It's really well emphasized. The sort of extra objectives, if you like, with the rings and stuff, all serve that because they reduce the time rather than giving you anything else.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's kind of good that like feeds into it, and that the rings are on like the harder route, but it looks like the shorter route. So then obviously that has its benefit as well. Whereas the easier route might take you longer because you have to like go right around the outside on this level, for example.
Yeah. So what have we clear core dynamic, supported by the primary mechanics. Yes. Is it supported by an integrated set of mechanics? And I think it probably is, because even if it were just the grappling and the timer, it would be pretty clear and well supported. But because they also have it's not just the mechanics, I guess, but it's also the level design of, like I say, the different routes, the riskier route, the safer route, the route with a power up that reduces your time, the sort of extra objectives and goals that are all time based. The only thing, again, I think I mentioned before is the controls feel a little bit like they could be a little bit more sensitive to really emphasize that. But otherwise, I think again we're probably at the excellent category here.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think I guess they could have had it that maybe there's a way of reeling yourself in and then speeding up how fast you're reeling yourself in or something like that. So like you have other aspects of that to help with this race to the end core dynamic.
Okay, so what did they say about their feedback and how they've acted on that?
So they've said, while presenting our idea for this game to Professor Chapman, we realised that the core dynamic was not clear and could branch out into multiple dynamics. To close down the scope of the project and to have a clarity of what the dynamic would be going forward, we scrapped some of the early ideas we had for the game, such as an evasion dynamic, which will see the player utilise their grappling hook to navigate around enemy entities that would reset their progress in a level. The concept of risk and reward in our game was not fully fleshed out, as was pointed out to us in our feedback. There was no need for the player to experiment, no reward for them to try out different playstyles, i.e. fast-paced by stringing together multiple hooks and maintaining momentum versus slowly progressing by grappling to each safe grappling point. We found it easier to implement risk and reward into our game as a direct result of settling on a single core dynamic. A race to the end game's replayability comes from the player feeling rewarded in some way by completing levels quicker than they had previously had, meaning we had to add the time taken to complete the level in the player view and give the player some reward for completing levels within certain ranges. Quicker time led to more gems lighting up in the level complete screen. The risk portion of risk versus reward came from our level design by clearly defining easy but slow routes and having the juxtaposition of difficult but quicker to the end goal routes. This allowed us to give the player agency so they could choose to play it safe, feeling content with just completing the level, or the more determined players can keep retrying the level to see if they can find a quick pace through the dangerous route and get to the end, finding satisfaction in executing a difficult traversal strategy. And they've got one more final bit. Shall I go for that as well?
Yeah, I'd want to say that as well.
We were also told in our feedback that perhaps the player could be given more agency within the tutorial levels and to allow them to play and find out rather than be told each individual step they should take to complete a level. Initially, we had planned to have each level introduce a sub-mechanic of the game, i.e. graph to a set of points as instructed for the level, then introduce reeling towards said point in the following level, which wouldn't be as engaging for a player who could pick up the mechanic easily. Now we have a set of tutorial levels with increasing difficulty, which introduce each major aspect of the games as follows. Level 1 is the grapple and reel mechanic. Level 2, putting together multiple grapple and reel actions without landing in between. Level 3, the concept of the reset gate. Level 4, the concept of the time reducer collectible, which allows the player to get a quicker time and hence more gems when completing the level. And then level 5, putting together the above concepts in a more difficult level.
What was the reset gate?
That's what I was thinking. I can't remember. That was level 3, I think.
It's level 3. Oh, is that... So it's not... I'm guessing that's these things. So it's just extra obstacles. Because, yeah, it's the gate in the sense that it's the same shape as that, but it resets us to the start of the level, I would guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So, yeah, overall, very thorough discussion of the feedback they got. And I think overall, yeah, those changes have all had, like, very positive impacts. So really emphasizing the core dynamic they wanted through a number of different ways. I guess the case is sort of, what do you think about, you know, their interpretation of the feedback? Have they just sort of done a thing that they were told to do, or have they sort of thought about how to best include it in their game?
I guess it's almost like probably a bit of a mix, but I think especially for the tutorial, I think the way they've set up the tutorial has definitely addressed the feedback, and I don't know how much that would have been explicitly said to them. Like, obviously they're told to like introduce it in play, but it sounded like they were already going to do that, but just less, giving the player less choices. So I think definitely for that one, they've interpreted it and addressed it like independently, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. So I think that's... So would you say that's between good and excellent, or would you say that's at the excellent level?
I think probably at the excellent levels. I think like some bits maybe like the easy versus the harder routes was probably more like doing as they were told in some ways, but the like narrowing down the core dynamic and the tutorial, I think, probably puts them towards the excellent level.
I think I agree with you there. So I think that's an excellent for feedback, which brings us to the end of this game and the end of this video. So yeah, thank you very, very much for watching. We will be back in another video with some more games in a little bit. Bye-bye.